Hello friends and my lovely viewers. Welcome back to the channel of Neon Safe. Today we will talk about the brand new Ganesh clan of Bloodline. Let's get started.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. I'm tired of shit.
The clan trait of our Ganesh champions is called Ruthless. At level 18, from the start of the battle all enemy champions will take 5% increased damage. Every 5 seconds, there will be a 4.24% added and this goes up to 34.7%. The effect cannot be dispelled or stacked. To break it down a little, we start with a 5% increased damage on enemies. After 5 seconds, this percentage increases to 9.24%. Another 5 seconds goes by, making it a 13.48% debuff on the enemies, and so on. It should look something like this. So we will need a total of 35 seconds for this clan trait to take full effect. It may be a long wait, but even with a 20-second buff, it looks truly amazing in my opinion. This is the type of trait that may function really well on tanks and supports. We should not place it on our main DPS champions by the way, since that would only take up a potential damage dealing trait slot. But I can tell that this trait of ours could be really good for our team in general, as it helps everyone deal more damage to the enemy. It may also be compatible together with the clan trait called Icy Thorns. Icy Thorns is also focused on making the opponent take more damage. So imagine if we place both of these clan traits on a tank role champion. I personally believe it may work out exceptionally well for us with a double debuff on our enemy champions. If Ganesh's clan trait works out the way it is described to us, then it may hit the S tier. If not the S tier, then it should theoretically speaking make it to the A tier. I believe the only thing stopping our Ruthless trait from becoming a broken trait is the time it takes for the effect percentage to increase. From 20 seconds is when our trait is starting to look good, and most battles do not last for very long. So that is a little bit concerning, but apart from that, our clan trait looks amazing. It is actually very similar to our Sanguine clan trait, and we may have a hard time figuring out which one is superior, or if we would like to have both clan traits in our team. Well, that was pretty much all I had to say about our clan trait. Do you think our Ganesh's clan trait will be any good? Let us know your thoughts below. It is time for us to discuss our Hindu god-inspired champions next, starting with our warrior female. In her active skill we will strike the enemy in front 4 times. Our first 3 attacks deal 200% strength damage each, and the final hit will deal 380% strength damage and stun the enemies for 2 seconds. Each one of these 4 hits will steal 3% of the enemy's current strength, and it has a limit of 4% of our female Ganesh's strength. The stolen strength power will be returned to us after 6 seconds, and our champion will be immune to control effects during this skill. We basically deal damage, stun the enemies, steal strength power from the enemy to deal higher damage, and we are immune to control effects during this skill. Let us view it a little differently. Our champion comes off as a damage dealer and debuffer, who reduces the strength of our enemy and amplifies her own strength. That is basically how the steal effect works, and it looks interesting and unique in my opinion. But I don't know if it will be that useful to us to be honest. It has a 4% cap of our champion's strength, which means the effect will depend on how much strength female Ganesh has. Anyways, we may still benefit from this type of effect, since we can steal strength from the enemy multiple times. And this skill will mostly affect the high-strength DPS champs, which may include our incredibly strong guardians. We may give her active skill a thumbs up for now. Let us move on to her passive skill next. When we deal damage to the target, if the target has a shield, each of our attacks will ignore the enemy's fortitude and block, and we will deal additional true damage equal to 3% of their max constitution. This goes up to 2000% of our own strength. When we successfully trigger this passive effect, we recover 120 energy points and 10% constitution. This effect of ours can trigger up to 4 times every 5 seconds. To break it down, a target with a shield will take more damage, which is based on the target's max constitution. We have a strength cap, and whenever we target an enemy who wields a shield, we will recover 120 energy and 10% constitution for ourselves. There is another limit of how often we can trigger this passive effect, aka 4 times every 5 seconds. Are we having some kind of counter skill to challenge our Void Guardian? Cause it really sounds like it in my opinion. This entire skill is solely based on bullying shield-holding champions, and our Void Guardian uses a shield in his active skill. I feel like our female Ganesha's passive skill is onto something, but I doubt it will be strong enough to overpower our Void Guardian. So perhaps this skill is aiming for some other champion, hybrid of Guardian of Bloodline. We may keep it in the back of our heads though, that this skill is meant to oppose shield effects. Anyways, moving on to her ultimate skill. We create a 8 seconds lasting circle. Allies that are within our circle will gain 5% strength per second and 100 energy. This bonus lasts until the circle ends. During our 8 seconds, we consume 400 energy per second and attack the area in front, dealing 310% strength damage to enemies within the area. If our enemy's current shield is less than 630% of own strength, this attack will shatter the enemy's shield. We will be immune to control effects and unable to launch active skill during the 8 seconds. This looks like an amazing buff for the allies. Our allies' strength will stack up by 5% every second. We also gain extra energy points for all our allies, which will help them launch skill attacks during the strength buff period. Our champion deals some damage along with our team, and if said criterias are met, we may also be able to break the target's shield. I am almost getting my hopes up for this champion even though it is a warrior type. Do you think maybe Bloodline is trying to give us a useful warrior for once? Because she looks quite nice with her strength buff and shield hatred. She is mainly created to debuff the enemy's strength, buff her allies' strength, and break shields. I oddly feel like we may want to consider this female champion for our team, but at the same time I feel like she is all over the place. One moment she is aiming to break shield effects, and the next moment she is seeking out the enemy's strength to take it for herself, and then the next moment she is buffing allies. And like I mentioned in our previous video, it is hard to settle for a warrior when our Guardian Stone investments don't align with the champion's warrior role. So that is another thing we have to keep in mind. Anyways, these are just my own personal opinions, and we are free to decide whatever we like. Let us move on to discuss our male tank Ganesh. In his active skill, we will deal 920% strength-based damage to enemies in the area and inflict a 3-second taunt effect. We also remove most negative effects and reduce the damage taken by 28% for the next 4 seconds. Simply we deal AoE damage, which taunts the enemies. We remove negative effects and reduce damage taken. This is a very basic tank-like behavior, and I believe it may help us keep the enemies in check. He basically keeps the enemies focused on himself instead of his allies, and also ensures he doesn't go all suicide mode by reducing his own damage taken. We may give this active skill a thumbs up, since it is short but it works. In the passive skill, when our champion applies control effects to enemies who already have immunity to control effects, their damage taken will permanently be increased by 7.4%, up to 37%. If our champion applies control effects to enemies who do not have immunity to control effect, then we will gain a shield equal to 6% of our max constitution for 6 seconds. So launching a control effect on an enemy who has immunity to control gives our enemy a debuff which makes it take 7.4% more damage permanently. So if we repeat this multiple times to the same enemy, according to our calculations the results will look something like this. We basically need to launch a control effect a total of 5 times to the same enemy to reach the debuff cap of 37% damage taken. This is how I understood the effect of our passive skill, but do feel free to correct me if I am wrong. As for if we launch control effect on an enemy who do not have immunity to control effects, we will gain a shield that relies on our max constitution. If our max constitution is very high, that means we receive a stronger shield. I personally believe this skill looks very promising, especially since we may be able to launch control effects on multiple enemies at the same time. Our active skill has control effects, and our ultimate skill may also have control effects. That reminds me, let us check out his final ultimate skill before we make our final conclusion. We will pull in nearby enemies for 4 seconds. While casting, our damage taken will be reduced by 38%, and we will deal 275% strength damage per second to enemies within range. This attack also briefly stuns the enemies affected for 1 second. After this 4-second lasting effect, we will knock up enemies in range and deal 420% strength damage. The knocked up enemies will upon landing, deal additional true damage equal to 7% of their max constitution to themselves and nearby enemies. This has a limit of 2000% of our champion's strength. Quickly explained, we drag the enemies towards ourselves, we take less damage and deal damage. We stun the enemy and knock them up. We deal damage to the enemies, and they also take damage upon impact with the hard ground. Our champion launches control effects in this skill, which will help our passive skill weaken the enemies. I believe we may give this ultimate skill of his a thumbs up as well. He can absolutely tank the hell out of the enemy, and I think he may be capable enough to keep our team alive for longer. Right now we may feel more interested in the male of this clan, cause he honestly seems extremely annoying to the enemy. But we all have our very own thoughts and opinions on this, and some of us may want to aim for the female Ganesh. And that is completely alright. I personally feel more drawn towards our male Ganesh over the female, simply because he has debuffing effects that look very efficient. Clearly he is supposed to take damage from the enemy and basically aggro the team to safety. We may want to place him in the front row so he can properly act out as the tank he is. But we may explore a little and try out the mid row just to see what works the best with our team. As for the female Ganesh, we may want to try her in the mid row since she acts like a short range, but she is not extremely durable in battle. It is also important that we switch them around and try out different random placements in battle, since our team comps are very individual and unique to each and one of us. This all being said, I believe we have covered the topic for today. If you have any questions or thoughts you would like to share with us, feel free to comment below. To partake in our giveaways, subscribe to the channel. And you may leave a like or share the video with your friends, if you want to show your support. We highly appreciate your support and contribution. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and have an amazing day. Take care, stay foxy, adios, bye.